and it's good to be with you guys. We're getting a little bit closer to some normalcy. It was really good to be in Kinnick Stadium on Saturday. I thought that was definitely a step in the right direction. To walk in there, smell popcorn, see the fans. Certainly there was a little bit of energy that we haven't had in quite some time, over 13, 14 months. So definitely step in the right direction. Feel very fortunate. Was able to be vaccinated a couple weeks ago, and I'm hopeful that by the fall, perhaps we can all be together again. So, as far as the spring goes, this is really, as a coach, this is the best time of year. This is a lot of fun because you have a lot of guys on your roster at different stages, different areas of development. We have some guys that played a lot of good football for us and are playing at a really high level right now. Guys like Tyrone Tracy, Tyler Linderbaum, Tyler Goodson, Sam Laporta, Spencer Petras. Those guys that have played in the ball games are certainly a little bit further ahead in their knowledge, their mastery, those types of things. And then you have guys that were in high school about 2-3 months ago. So that range presents some unique opportunities, some unique challenges throughout the spring. You're trying to engage the older guys. You're trying to help them grow and mature. And certainly they're at a different level. And then with those younger guys, some of them were just trying to get them to walk a little bit before they can run. So as a coach, it's a lot of fun. You see a lot of improvement. You see a lot of development throughout the course of the practices. And really, that's why you do this. So certainly through 4 weeks, we are not quite where we want to be. I'm glad we're not playing a football game on Saturday, but very pleased too with the development that we have made over the course of the spring and the 10 practices that we've gotten in. So looking forward to the next 5 practices, looking forward to cleaning some things up, continuing to improve over the next 2 weeks, and then moving into a summer so we can have a productive phase, through the summer. And every phase is important, but nothing is more important than the 5 practices that are in front of us right now. And with that, open it up to questions from you guys.
Thank you, Brian, for those opening remarks. We will take the first question this afternoon from Scott Docterman.
Good afternoon, Brian. How are you?
Scott, I'm well.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. I was wanting to know about the running game. Last year, we had a lot of consternation over it. 3.9 yards per carry the previous 2 years. Last year, it jumps up to 4.6. Was misdirection a key in helping that part of your game grow? And what also helped the running game become more powerful in the way you want to go?
There's obviously a lot of factors, and you bring up definitely one of them is misdirection, or even more than that, just threatening the whole field, right? So misdirection is certainly a part of that. You have your counter game. You have some of the zone counters that we run. And then you have some of the fly or jet type sweep stuff that ties into all that as well. We like to put the ball on the perimeter a couple of different ways. That's one of them. Some of the zone read or gap read type stuff that we've experimented with over the last couple of years became more of a different offensive package for us last year. We went to a wildcat type look where we took the quarterback off the field and put a ball carrier behind the center. But again, you like that because it's really, you're running 2 plays at the same time, right? You have a perimeter type play, and then you have an inside type play, whether it's zone or gap, and you're trying to put the defense in conflict. And I think that more than anything, when you talk about the scheme, forcing the ball on the perimeter at times, threatening the entirety of the field, you're creating some of those conflicts. Play action game as well, right? So you want to put every defender you can in conflict. A lot of the structures we see, whether it's play action, we're throwing down the field, trying to put a kind of a half box player in conflict, or throwing a little bit shorter, maybe putting one of those overhang defenders in conflict. That helped. I think we've expanded there. And I thought our naked game improved last year as well. That was a little bit more effective for us. And that certainly helps as well, right? When you can naked, again, you're just putting a run pass conflict on a certain defender, and that helps open everything up. But, scheme is scheme. And certainly we're always evaluating, trying to move forward, trying to help the bigger picture, the whole. But ultimately, I thought the line played very well last year, right? And we had a lot of development. We had a lot of guys improve and start playing at a really high level. Got pretty good production from the tight ends in the run game. Thought Monty Pottebaum was a really good addition for us in the running game as a fullback, H-back kind of guy, could do a couple of different things, and then the running backs carried the ball really well last year too, right? And the guys getting the primary carries, certainly Tyler Goodson, who's back, and we're excited to have him back, but I thought Mackay ran the ball extremely well last year too. So you put all that stuff together and you get some improvement, but that's what we're trying to focus on in the spring, right? Is slight tweaks to the scheme to help, but ultimately it's that development with the players and it's that improvement. And it's like anything. It's like a diet or a strength conditioning program. I think everybody has some kind of experience with that, at least in the holidays. You're not going to see those results maybe the first day you go out and work out. You're not going to see them the second. You're not going to see them the third. And by the time you actually see them, there's been a real significant amount of time that has passed. It's consistency. It's doing the same things day in and day out, and understanding it's all process, right? So, we're back in the early stages of that, but, certainly want to continue some of the misdirection and threatening the whole field. But ultimately, it's going to come down to how well we can block and run, and that's what we're working hard at right now.
Thank you.
Brian, the next question is from Chad Leistico.
Hey, Brian, good to see you.
Likewise, Chad.
We talked to Spencer a couple weeks ago, and one of the topics he really seemed to focus on was his accuracy. A lot of short throws he talked about, getting guys, the ball, in the right spot so they can make yards after the catch. I guess, is that kind of the style of offense you want to see this year, and how can that work in your eyes?
Well, I hope he's focused on that, because that's something we can control, right? So we're going to throw the ball short. We're going to throw the ball intermediately. We're going to throw the ball deep. I think we've demonstrated that over the last couple of years. We'd like to stretch the field. We'd like to push the ball down the field when it's appropriate and when it's available. But when you think about those throws, accuracy on a deep ball is easier said than done, right? We're not playing Madden. Throwing and catching deep balls is actually a lot more difficult than it appears, because a lot of them are landmark throws, and then a lot of them are field throws and touch throws, and in fact, I think the desire for accuracy can sometimes hinder a quarterback's ability to push the ball down the field. A lot of times when you have a guy downfield, trying to be too accurate is a problem, right? You got to put it out there and trust the guy to make a play from time to time, and you also have to understand, those aren't high percentage throws. So we're not going to complete those at as high of a rate. But when you're talking about those shorter and intermediate throws, now your percentage of completion should go up, certainly, right? The level of difficulty is not quite as precise. But when we don't throw those balls accurately, we're leaving yardage on the field, right? A receiver has to slow down to catch a ball turns him back. You just think about a simple throw like an out route, quick out, speed out, doesn't matter. But you're throwing the ball out on the perimeter of the defense. The reason that ball is going there is no flat defender. So it's a free access throw, right? It's a gifted throw. Okay, if you lead the defender, if you put that ball outside, okay, and allow him to catch that thing on the run, that's a very natural continuation. He's running away from anyone that could tackle him or may tackle him, right? You miss him slightly inside or slow him down. Even if we get the completion, now we're looking at a 5-yard gain or a 10-yard gain instead of any type of catch and run. So I think what we tried to stress with Spencer and all our quarterbacks really is, in the opportunities we have to place that ball and extend plays for the receiver, we need to do that. That's something that's certainly doable and within our control. And I think for any player, right, that constant evolution and improvement is what we're looking for. And finding those details in those areas where you do need to improve, where you do need to get better, being honest about those, and going out and working on them, which I've seen him do. And I'm very pleased with that, but certainly we still have a lot of work to do.
The next question, Brian, is from Tom Kakert.
Hey, Brian, hope you're doing well.
Likewise.
Wanted to ask you about a couple of kind of new additions on two fronts. One, your side of the ball, coaching staff wise, you have Liddell Betts and Coach Barnett coming in. How involved were you in the hiring process? What you've seen from those guys, and also you've got a couple of true freshmen that could potentially help you this year with Keegan Johnson and Arlen Bruce, and what you've seen in 10, 12 practices you've had so far.
Well, I'll address the coaching question first. It's difficult anytime you go through a change, as a coaching staff. It's hard because we'd been together as a staff for 4 years in Tim's case and 3 years in Derek's case. And you go very close to people, right? And, ultimately we're all professionals, we're all colleagues, but inevitably we develop friendships. So it's difficult to see those guys go. But certainly you're very happy for anybody's professional success or advancement. And I think it was a pretty easy decision in both cases, right? So sorry to see those guys go, but the minute that you have an opening on the staff, you're trying to look at that as an opportunity. Can we grow? Can we improve? Can we get better as a football program? And first and foremost, we need to bring in quality people. We know that. So George was a guy that we knew pretty well through a network, but did not know George well personally, and just were very impressed with him throughout the process. Interviewed very well, and then the more we got to know him, and more we found out about him, it just was very apparent that he was going to be a really good fit. And so far, so good. He's done a really nice job with those guys. And I think it's difficult when you walk in and you have a group, right, that's been together for quite a few years with the same coach. Those guys in that room have been coached by Tim, and that's it. So you have to come in and gain that trust, and you better know what you're doing. So I think George has done a really nice job so far. Very pleased to have him on the staff. And then with Liddell, again, you want to open that search up. And one thing that I found as we interviewed prospects and candidates, and talking to Liddell, obviously first and foremost, he's a very quality person. He's got a lot of experience in working with young people, although it was at the high school level, which in some ways I think probably uniquely qualifies him for what we're going to ask him to do here. But the other thing that just was so apparent was he was passionate about running back play. And believe it or not, it's actually not, it was one of Derek's great strengths, right? Is he's passionate about running back play. It's harder and harder to find guys that are passionate about running back play. It's kind of like line coaches. George is passionate about coaching the offensive line. He's passionate about line play. A lot of people aren't. That's okay. It's not the most attractive position. It's not the most exciting position. And although running back, certainly there's a little bit more glory there. It's not a position where a lot of guys are just fired up and excited to coach running backs and talk about running back play. And Liddell's lived it, for the majority of his life. That's what he's done. And the passion that he had for playing the position and his ideals for playing the position, his vision of what that looked like, I thought it was remarkable. And just really pleased with what he's been able to add so far, and excited to see what the future holds with both those guys.
Tom had also asked about the incoming freshman helping out on the.
I'm sorry, Tom. Yeah, I'm not trying to dodge that one. That was almost pretty smooth. But very, very pleased. In fact, offensively, 4 guys have joined us, right, in this class that are here early. The 2 receivers that you mentioned, and the 2 offensive linemen, David Davidoff and Connor Colby, have both enrolled early. So I've been really pleased with what we've seen out of all 4 of those guys, quite honestly. You think about how far that transition is to come from high school to college. To do it in this situation, I think is extra difficult with some of the challenges that COVID has presented for these guys. But all 4 guys have really just kind of joined the team and held their own. And they've handled their business in a very mature way, and I'm pleased with that. And then on the field, we've seen really good things so far. But it's difficult to say. That the challenge right now is obviously we lost some very good players at the receiver position. We're looking for help. We're trying to find out who's going to play those spots. We're giving everybody an opportunity. And with what they've done so far, both those guys have seized those opportunities. They've capitalized them, and they've improved. the key for them, just like anybody else, is going to be continuing to improve between now and the fall, because I'm not quite sure they're ready to go out there right now and do everything exactly the way that it needs to be done for us to be successful. But they're certainly trending in the right direction and taking the right steps. Just really impressed with their work ethic and their attitude and the way they approach things.
The next question, Brian, is from Mike Halas.
Brian, about the transfer portal, how has it changed how you guys recruit? How have you coped, adjusted? Do you have to work harder at player retention? Are you keeping scholarships open for transfers? I know it's a wide-ranging question, but in a nutshell, how is your program dealing with it?
Yeah, it is a big question, Mike. And it's a good question, and I think it's something we're still working through currently, right? The landscape has continued to change. I know some of the legislation obviously is really just, to me, formalizing some of the things that have been going on for 4 or 5 years, right? And making those things just a little bit easier, perhaps less red tape to jump through, which, that's probably a good thing in the end. As far as how we're going to approach it, or how we have approached it, we've tried to stay pretty steady, and the goal is to recruit players. You talked about player retention. The goal is to retain them, right? We want to make sure we're bringing in the guys that we've evaluated in a proper way, right, and figured out, hey, listen, these are guys that are worth working with. These are guys that can develop into football players and help our team. So certainly you want to keep as many of those guys around as possible. The one thing that I think has changed dramatically, just in my eyes, in the last 5 years, is you just need to accept it and probably plan for the fact that you're going to lose more and more guys to early entry into the National Football League. That standard has just changed. And once upon a time, guys were waiting until they were surefire first-round picks. Now that's changing, and that's fine, and that's good, right? It's a great opportunity for those players, but it does hurt your development on your roster where, hey, you got a guy and he's going into that third year, and you're hoping you get him back because you're counting on it. It's difficult when you're trying to develop it at certain positions and bring guys along, right? So it can kind of screw your depth up. We're dealing with that a little bit at the tight end position. Still, kind of the reverberations of 3 years ago, where 2 third-year players are gone. Guys make great decisions. They should have left. But it does screw with your numbers a little bit. And what you try to do is look at the transfer portal to address that. That's how we've approached it. And, trying to build depth. We did it with Coy Cronk last year. And, we tried to do it 2 years ago with a tight end that we got pretty serious with. And he ended up going to a different school. And that's ultimately the difficult part about the transfer portal as well, right? You're recruiting. It's not free agency. You can't just go out and sign players to meet your needs. You have to go out and recruit them, and they still have to make decisions. So we're trying to use it to bolster our roster more than build it, I think, if that makes sense. But ultimately, this is an evolving process, and I think we're going to need to be open to things changing in the future. We need to kind of learn what we're dealing with here first, and I think we're still all in the process of that.
Brian, we got 3 more hands up in the chat, so we'll go through all 3 of them. The first one will go to Leah Van.
Hi, Brian. I'm Leah. I'm new to the beat. I'm with the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Nice to meet you virtually.
Nice to meet you virtually.
And I was going to ask about the tight end position group. We talked with Sam Laporta yesterday, saw a little bit of Luke Lachey on Saturday. I just wanted to know your thoughts on that position group right now, which has kind of a lot of inexperienced players, and just what the younger guys are contributing and, yeah, what you've seen out of them.
Well, it's a good question. And, it's not only do we have a lot of inexperienced players, we only have one experienced player, right? So I think what I've seen out of the young guys is very encouraging. You're trying to develop and build that knowledge base and build that fundamental base that we can hopefully count on here in the fall. But it starts with the veteran guys. And I think Sam's provided really good leadership in that room. I think he's done an excellent job of trying to bring those younger guys along. And I know that was done for him at one time in his career. So I think he's pretty attuned to that. He got thrown in the fire pretty early. And we may have to do that with some of these young guys here, but the whole idea is just to improve on a daily basis and get a little bit better. And then it kind of raise the exposure level to these guys, right? So, you try to start them out in the shallow end. The best you can. You're kind of holding them while you teach them how to paddle in the water. Then eventually you got to let them swim on their own a little bit. And that's kind of the stage that we've gotten to with some of these young guys, and it provides really valuable experience. I know Luke was able to kind of show up a couple of times in the open practice, and that was a real positive thing. I could tell he also showed up a couple of times in maybe not such a positive way. That doesn't get written about as much, which I'm sure he appreciates and his parents appreciate. But he catches a ball and makes a big catch on a third down in a fairly competitive period. Then he comes back on the next play and goes the wrong way and kills a run play. So these are important steps for guys like Luke. These are important steps for all our young players. It's to go out there and experience a little bit of success. And then also, probably more importantly, to experience some of that failure. Because that's how you learn, that's how you grow. And the best part of spring is the skill development, where we can go out. Right? Every day we can go out and we can put these guys in a little bit tougher situation. Don't expect it to be perfect. Don't expect it to be right. In fact, we expect plenty of mistakes to be made. We can come back. We can look at the tape. We can identify those things that are correctable. We can show it to the players. We can talk about it. And then we can go out the next day and try it again. And then, once we build some mastery there, then we can start increasing the variables. And all our young players, but in the tight end room specifically, I think they've done a nice job, embracing that process and understanding that improvement is slow. It can be tedious. It can even be painful at times. But there is a process to it, and really, there's only one way to do it. It's not magic, And I think Sam talked about it with you guys yesterday. But the idea as a player is I think, in my mind at least, hopefully you always turn on that tape, and you look at a prior version of yourself, and you watch that and you think, man, I can't believe I was that bad, even if you were good, right? Because otherwise you're not improving. I would hope any player we have can look back on older tape and say, geez, I wasn't quite there. I can't believe that I was no good. But that's the way it works. And it's a long, slow process that those guys have embraced and are doing a nice job with. But look forward to continuing it for the next few months.
Brian, 2 more questions. The next one is from Scott Docterman.
I wanted to ask you about your 2 Tylers. Tyler Linderbaum, my opinion, the best center in the country last year. Tyler Goodson, who was one of the best running backs in the Big Ten last year. How have they improved? What do you see from them? And what is kind of your anticipation of how they'll perform later this fall?
Well, I'll start with the final part of the question. I would anticipate they perform very well. I don't want to put pressure on guys. But boy, I'd be really disappointed if they did not perform at a high level. They did not play well, and that would certainly surprise me, because it's the same thing we just talked about with those young tight ends. What really impressed me about those 2 guys is they just they're improvement driven. They are not satisfied with their performance on any level. They're trying to get better, and I think that's why they're good players. Certainly they're talented, but there are a lot of talented guys. Having that mindset of growth and improvement, that can be difficult, especially when you achieve. When you achieve and you reach some of those goals, or you get some of that recognition that's well deserved. Can you stay hungry? Can you continue to improve? Can you be focused on what's next? And I think both those guys have been. And I've seen a lot of improvement in the offseason. I've seen a lot of practice here through 10 days. And both guys are competing and performing at a high level. And I think one thing that's worth knowing about both of those guys, they want to be on the field. They want to be on the field. They want to be practicing. They want to be improving. When you have a mindset like that, I think you have a chance to really go somewhere. So expect both those guys to perform at a very high level. Where they stack up nationally, I don't know. I know I'm really happy. I'm very excited. And I think I speak for the whole coaching staff that we're excited they're on our football team. It's fun to coach them. It's fun to watch them develop and grow. Look forward to continuing to do that. but certainly expect them to play their best football. And I know this, if we're gonna have a good football team, if we're gonna be successful offensively, defensively, special teams, anything within our program, our best players are gonna need to play their best football. And completely and totally anticipate those two guys doing that.
Brian, the final question is presented to you by Rob Howe.
Brian, your head coach released a statement last night about the verdict in Minneapolis, and I know you guys have had a lot of conversations since last summer. I'm wondering how you kind of viewed that, what type of conversations you're having, how you see that impact guys on the roster. Obviously, it's that separation between sports and society is pretty much gone now, and everybody's having hard conversations. I'm wondering what type of conversations you guys are having.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I appreciate the question, Rob. Obviously, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the separation between sports and society is gone. And really from where I sit, it seems like separation between anything and anything is gone. And we live in a very partisan world, be it politically, be it socially, be it economically. There's just a lot of division. And what I've learned probably more than anything in the last year, right, is sometimes it's important to listen. And I think we could all, certainly myself, but I think all of us could learn a lot from some of the youngest guys on our roster. We try to have conversations on a daily basis in this program, certainly as things come up. We try to be a lot more open within the program, a lot more dialogue in the last 12 months. But my number one priority is always going to be the players on our roster. And I think it's our job as adults to champion those guys, to support them in what they choose to do, and also to support them and encourage them in their personal feelings. So, we have conversations on a daily basis within this program, whether it be individually, as groups, position groups, Hawkeye championship groups, different age groups of guys. But ultimately, I think what my feeling is how do we continue to grow? How do we continue to listen and move forward? Ultimately, it's about relationships, and I know that seems it seems a little cliched, but certainly we talk about our objectives for the spring as an offense. The first thing we talk about, is continuing to kind of build more of a I don't know what the right word is, but just kind of that. Like a spirit de corps, right? I don't know if that's how you say it. Okay, but what does it come down to? It comes down to respect, and it's respect for one another on a personal level. It's respect for the job everyone does and understand how difficult that is. And then once you build that respect, I think you can have some real conversations and move forward. So we're going to continue to try to be open within our program. We're going to continue to be open to evolving and changing as times change around us. But ultimately, what is our job? Our job is to support our players, and our job is to make sure that their needs are met, emotionally. And that's what we're trying to do right now.
All right, Brian, thank you so much for the insight, and we greatly appreciate your time this afternoon.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. And, certainly appreciate seeing everybody. This screen doesn't allow me to see everybody that's on this deal, but I know this thing's well attended, and obviously we appreciate you guys being here week in and week out, opportunity with us, opportunity with our players. I'd like to open it up with, to see your guys' face again is, it's a lot like seeing some of our former players and our guys that are trying to live out their dreams of the NFL. And we've got a lot of them in the building. They've been in the building for a handful of weeks now. Some of them went off and trained, and then now they're back here, in between their training and, the opportunity that they have in a week and a half, 10 days from now. But, as it relates to, the linebacker position, I do want to give all the luck in the world to Nick Neiman and Barrington Wade and their pursuit. I know those guys have been busy with phone calls and, speaking with organizations. I spoke with Barrington yesterday. Sounds like, there's interest on his end and well-deserved, but I do want to wish them the best of luck to include a lot of our other players from last year as well. Secondly, it's nice to be back in Kinnick last weekend. You know, you guys saw it. I'm sure you appreciated being able to walk through the doors again, just like our players did. But you guys covering it, the fans that were there, the parents that were, you know, given the opportunity to be there with their kids and spend the afternoon with them, you know, was a really big deal. And, you know, obviously our players were excited about it, and they're certainly excited about the opportunity on May 1st. And is Pat Hardy on here? Pat, are you on here?
Pat is on a medical leave.
Okay. Well, I was going to wish him the best, because I did see that on Twitter. I'm not on it a bunch, but I did see that tomorrow morning. You know, he's got a deal at 8:30, and then I want to recognize Tom Kakert and Leah Van. I had some time, you know, in between some stuff this past weekend. I listened to your podcast with Leah, and Leah, it's good to have you. You know, I do think you're on here. I thought I heard your voice, you know, when you were asking a question with Brian, but it's good to have you. You got a remarkable story, and, you know, glad you're covering the Hawkeyes, and wish you all the best moving forward. Lastly, you know, in the spirit of defense, I do want to recognize, just because I know, you know, it's close to the athletic department, close to our program, but, you know, women's soccer, and what they accomplished here down the stretch. You know, I think you've seen that, you know, maybe in some years out of Hawkeye football, and the way that we've kind of got things turned around, you know, but in the spirit of defense, I think they had 3 straight games of, you know, of shutouts, and finished with a tournament title. And then, you know, our field hockey team is up to bat today, I think, here in about 28 minutes. So wish them the best as well. As it relates to our linebackers, I know they've kind of, you know, at least in the coverage lately, they've flown beneath the radar a little bit, but I do want to share with you guys the excitement that I've got for them. The expectations are high. It's a group of 12 right now. 7 of those I would consider veterans. 3 of them I would consider, you know, early enrollees, guys that, you know, that are just putting their foot in the water right now. And then there's 2 of them that were first-year guys from last year that, you know, joined our program late. They were, you know, joined it in August, and they're kind of getting their feet wet as well. But we've got 12 guys that are working real hard right now. Like I said, it's a veteran group, but if you were to ask me the question how many starts they had, I don't know that it would fit the term veteran. We've got 8 starts total between the group. There's only 2 on the roster that right now have more than 100 reps logged defensively. So, you know, it's a group that is a work in progress. You know, I'll go back to what Seth Benson shared with you guys yesterday, that, you know, we're rotating a lot of guys at a lot of different positions. And, you know, maybe to answer a question that would come up, you know, here in the next few minutes, you know, the reason behind that is when you lack experience depth-wise, and I'll give you guys an example here in a second. When you lack experience depth-wise, the challenge then becomes, can we create positional flexibility? Where you see this happening more so within our program is you probably see it on our offensive line. You probably see a guard that has tackle potential. You probably see a guard that has center potential, or vice versa. That's what we're trying to create right now, linebacker-wise. It is a challenge. Seth Benson mentioned, you know, how uncomfortable it can be at times, but, you know, I do see this thing as a long road. We've got 5 practices left. We got another 27 come August. So we've got a chance to get where we want to get. But, you know, the example that I would give you is, you know, I learned a real good lesson 2017. You guys probably remember the game. We were over at Northwestern. Josie Jewell, you know, did something the previous week that was ill-advised. He tried tackling with his shoulder on a sideline tackle that I believe was on the far side of the field, separated his shoulder. That didn't heal properly. So then we had to slide Ben Neiman in there. Ironically, he's played inside linebacker the last 2 years in the league and just signed, or last 3 years, and just signed another contract. So, you know, he probably should have said something before I did. But, you know, that was really his first shot at the inside linebacker position. I don't want to have, you know, that happen again, where a guy has to jump in there with, you know, with limited experience. So right now, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to create that experience, you know, through moving some guys around, and you'll see it 2 weeks from now or 10 days from now when we get back out there again on May 1st. But that gives you a little bit of a rundown. You know, right now I'd offer it up to any questions that you all have.
Thank you, Seth. We will throw it out there. And the first question this afternoon is from Scott Docterman.
Hey, Seth, how are you?
I'm doing well, Scott. You?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. Kirk kind of reserves his greatest applause for players he calls that have an extra heartbeat. And he's used it, I think, with Josie Jewell, probably Pat Anger, maybe a couple other players, and that's about it. He said the same thing last year about Jack Campbell, and when he actually got out there, he seemed to tip the field in his limited role. What do you expect from him this year, and what's his potential?
Yeah, last year was a tricky year in on a lot of different levels, and I don't think. I would share this with you, another stat that you guys might be able to bullet point at some point in your write-ups. All of these guys have 3 years minimum left of eligibility. So when I say they're young, at least some of them were afforded the opportunity through the COVID year to save another year. And I think they're going to benefit from it. I think as a team we'll benefit from it. But as it relates to Jack Campbell and the extra heartbeat, I could go on with maybe a couple other guys in the room as well, Scott, that probably share those similar characteristics. I do believe that they are, stuff like that is probably, how they grew up. But then I think some of it's developed. I think it's developed through our program. I think it's developed through the way that we practice. But as it relates to Jack Campbell, like there's something extra there. You just turn on the tape and watch the way that he practices. It's clear that there's a motor, there's a little bit, something tugging at his heart to get to the ball. So, we're anxious to get him back out there, hopefully in a normal year and get back at it and see what he can do.
The next question, Seth, is from Tom Kakert.
Seth, thanks for listening to the podcast. We need to do one again sometime.
Anytime you want.
Having Benson in the middle, he and Jack kind of split time last year. How do you go about deciding who's in the middle and who's at will between those two? What is there traits? Is the way they react? How do you go about making that decision? Because I'm getting the sense it's not in stone at this point.
It is not in stone at this point, Tom. And I'll give you a little bit. If our doors were open and COVID wasn't around and we were able to have all you guys back in here, we did that one time, I think, if I recall. But I'll share a little bit as if the doors were open and you were sitting in the linebacker room. And I'm sure you can envision this, but take for instance, if we were playing the old Illinois that would spread you out, and we had our 3 linebackers on the field. If we had our starting 3 linebackers on the field, which would include Jacobs, Campbell, and Benson, I would probably protect Campbell by having Jacobs and Benson on the perimeter and Campbell in the middle. If we're playing Wisconsin, where Wisconsin's a little bit more downhill oriented, they're a little bit more edge oriented with some of their run game. In some ways, it's predictable in terms of what side the ball may be going to. You'd probably find a way to get Jack Campbell up on the line of scrimmage, okay, which in some ways would look like a 3-4 outside backer or a stand-up defensive end. And then maybe you could live with the other 2 inside. So I don't know that to me, the recipe is based on the opponent. But through what we're doing right now and the position flexibility that we're creating, I think that will give us, maybe an opportunity like that to get a little bit creative, down the road. But, the 3 right now are working, they're working real good together in the first group. There is a clear cut between that first group and, right now we'll keep rolling with it and continue to develop depth behind it and hopefully some more position flexibility.
Seth, the next question is from Chad Leistico.
Hey, Seth, look forward to seeing you on a practice field sometime in the future, hopefully. Obviously it was the George Floyd situation and death last year that kind of triggered some of the conversations you had in June. I guess just, with yesterday's verdict in mind and thinking back to this past year, where do you see, the most areas of growth, maybe personally and also team-wide in this last year?
Yeah, I think starting with the personal side of things, more awareness, obviously, being more transparent, having more more communication, opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with guys that are maybe a little bit closer to the situation than others. And then collectively as a team, I would say, on the same levels, like, it's brought us closer as a team. I think our players have alluded to that. I think we've become more transparent as a coaching staff and a team as a whole. But the one thing that you do realize, and you realize it through conversation like we had this morning, that we're so far away from where this thing is going, and I don't know that we've gotten any closer. And I'm talking about a more global picture of things. But we can do the work here in our building. We can spend more time with each other. We can get to know each other better and have those conversations. And if we do that, then to me, we've got a chance to affect those on the outside. And but it's been a good process for us. But I would say that even the conversations that existed this morning would tell you that we've got a lot of work to do as a country, and it's stopping this cycle that we're in, because it's been 331 days since the passing and murder of George Floyd, and in between there, I don't know how much has actually gotten better. So we've got a lot of work to do.
The next question, Seth, is from David Eichholt.
Good to see you. Thanks for taking it. I hope you're doing well. Seth Benson is kind of struck me as a guy who's pretty consistent across the board, played really well last year. And can you just describe his growth throughout the spring? And then I guess to kind of add on to that, we talked to Seth, I believe, yesterday, and he talked about how you like putting us in uncomfortable situations. Can you give us a couple examples of those uncomfortable situations that you kind of throw these linebackers in, and what do you kind of want to see out of it?
Okay, I will. And did you describe him as conditioned?
No, consistent. Sorry.
Consistent. Okay, I was gonna use. He is conditioned like you would condition my 10-year-old his baseball mitt. Seth Benson is. I don't want to call him a Swiss Army knife, but I do think that that's what we're trying to create. We're trying to provide opportunity for this team that we can put our next best or our best linebacker, in each position. But, the uncomfort would start here. If I'll give you an example, we go 9-on-7, which is really an inside run period. It's an isolated run drill against our offense. We've got 4 down linemen out there. We've got 3 linebackers. And on the first play, Jacobs is at Leo, Campbell's at Mike, and Benson is at Will. And then on the second play, this has been going on now for about 4 days now. And on the second play, those 3 guys got to rotate. Okay. And the comfort of sitting in your own love seat at home is the comfort that you would want to have as a linebacker. Okay. The uncomfort is, okay, you were sitting in, the middle linebacker position. And on the next play, you have to go sit in the will linebacker position, which forces you to put your eyes in different places. It forces you to see things differently and even communicate differently. So that's really the uncomfort that I'm trying to create. We're going to have plenty of time when we get to August to back off of this. But right now, these guys are growing. Like I said at the very beginning, like I'm extremely excited about this group, all 12 of them. But some of these guys that have a little bit of experience under their belt are growing at a very, very fast rate.
Seth, the next question is from Leah Van.
Hi, Seth. Thanks for the personal shout out there. And yeah, I was going to ask about Zach Tweet and Justice Sullivan, your early enrollees. I was wondering what you've seen out of them so far, because I think they were sitting out of Saturday's practice, if I remember correctly. So yeah, if you could elaborate on them.
They were both sitting out, and I don't want to fail to mention Eric Epinesa as an early enrollee. It's a little bit different on Eric's choice to come in versus these guys leaving high school early. But those 3 they all came in early. This has all been you come in a COVID year early, like it's nobody, it's not normal. You're not going to class. There's a lot of things that they're juggling. When I say not going to class, they are going to class. They're not going to in-person class in a lot of cases. But, as it relates to Justice Sullivan and Zach Tweet, Zach hasn't been on the field all spring. He is getting much needed. I would say that he came in some ways that we've had others come in before, where we've needed to, fine tune maybe their body a little bit. But for medical reasons, I just tell you that he's doing a great job, extremely diligent, takes unbelievable notes, participates in meetings. Like he's having as good a spring as he can without being on the field. And then Justice is very unique in a lot of ways, on a lot of levels. And I would say from a player standpoint, he might have the heaviest hands of anybody that we've had. You can hear him hit another guy across from him with his hands, which is a unique ability. Like he's got it. Now, the scheme and all that is a long ways away from, where it needs to be with him. But you just talk about fundamentals and willingness to play the linebacker position. I'm looking forward to both of these guys down the road. But based on what I've seen on the field, it's exciting forecasting Justice's future.
Seth, the next question is from Scott Docterman.
Yeah, Seth, I was interested in knowing kind of the evolution of your Leo Cash debate per se at that position group. And I think last year, I want to say it was like 24% of your plays had three backers on the field. Is that just dependent upon the opponent, the personnel grouping you face, or are you as a unit kind of skewing more towards the fifth DB as opposed to the third LB if all things are equal?
Okay, I would say I'll answer that question on two different levels, Scott, and it's a good question. You go back and you look at some games last year, and I think you'd find yourself coming back probably to the two answers that I'm going to give you. One, it does start with personnel. If they come out in 11 personnel, one back, one tight end, okay, in most cases, we're going to live in the Cash world. If they come out in a two-back tight end look, a 21 personnel look, we're going to live in the 4-3 world. Now, with that being said, the asterisk to that is the complexion of the game. What you saw last year against Wisconsin in the second half, okay, is a very good example of the complexion of the game. It wasn't necessarily, okay, a personnel at that point that we were trying to match up. It was a matchup that we were trying to create on the perimeter, regardless of personnel, because the ball was ending up out on the perimeter a lot more. Okay, and we've had to make these choices, multiple times, over the 8-game season that we had last year to just, if we want a little bit more sturdiness in what we're trying to do defensively, regardless of personnel, then we're going to live in the 40 world, the three linebacker world. But if it's more of an RPO, if it's more of, the ball is just kind of passively ending up in different places, then we're going to be inclined to try to put a better guy in space out there and see how he does coverage-wise.
Thanks much. I appreciate it.
We're good here, so I want to thank you for taking the time this afternoon.
Thank you. Appreciate it. See you guys on May 1st.
That sounds good.
Well, thank you guys for being here this afternoon. Obviously, after 10 practices, our guys are working hard. I can't stress that enough. It's been much talked about, with the losses up front that we've had over the past couple of years, how we're going to replace them. And, that doesn't, it's not an overnight process. The process of replacing is year round. That starts with, the training that the guys receive, both from fall camps, bowl preps, things of that nature. So, the unique thing about, this year is that we haven't had the opportunity to have those, that bowl prep. We didn't have the opportunity to have that spring ball last year. So these 15 opportunities that we have this spring they're invaluable for the group. But I can't say enough about the attitude and the effort, the energy, the enthusiasm that these young men bring to practice every day. And it's going to be needed because we talk about nothing great's ever been achieved without energy and enthusiasm. and those guys bring it every single day. So I'm really pleased with where we're at as a group. You know, the guys up front, the older guys up front, Van Valkenburg, Noah Shannon, you know, John Wagner, those guys are doing an excellent job leading the room, leading by example and both leading vocally. So I just can't say enough about those guys, what they've done. They've embraced that leadership role. And, you know, they've had the opportunity to be in those young guys' positions, you know, a few years ago. It's strange to think about Noah and John, for instance, as being the older guys in the room. I remember when they both came in as freshmen in 2018. And, you know, just puppies wet behind the ears and didn't know up from down. But those older guys did an excellent job of leading them. And then they're now returning to favor it. And that's the culture that you want to breed in the room. That guys understand that they're going to surrender me and adopt we as soon as they walk in, and just keep that cycle going of when young guys come in, guys, you know, bring them into the fold, continue to help them, mentor them, coach them on the side, you know, tell them right from wrong. And then when you have a situation when opportunities arise through graduation, through early entry to the NFL draft, things of that nature, that the young men are ready. They're ready for the opportunity. So I'm excited. It's a really good group, fun group, and the future's bright for them. So with that being said, I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Kelvin. We will take the first question this afternoon from Rick Brown.
Hey, Kelvin. A lot of people, you know, if their career had ended with an injury and they might have put football in the rearview mirror, but yet you have kept a passion for it, and you've turned into a coaching profession. What kept you going with football after it was so tough on you?
Man, how long you got, Rick? That's a great question, and it's a question that I bring up a lot. You know, yeah, unfortunately, my football career was cut short, and I was done with it. I remember Coach Ferentz offered me an opportunity to become a student coach, and I turned it down. I finished my degree. I was going to go and I got my degree in computer science and mathematics, and I was going to go off into the real world. And I found out that I didn't really like the real world. I didn't. My younger brother moved to Iowa City with me my last year in college, and he went to Iowa City, Regina, and I would go up there, and you know, it was not the Regina that you know today. You know, they didn't have a strength coach. I would go up there and work out with my brother, and it started out with just he and I, and it turned it into 20-something guys. And Coach Chuck Evans, who's actually Joe Evans' uncle. Small world, but you know, Chuck Evans gave me an opportunity to coach the junior high at Regina. I was the defensive coordinator with Glenn Plummer, and that just being out there with those kids every day. I'd go to work and then I'd get off early and scribble up some plays or some drills and go out there, and I had the time of my life just being around those young people. So that's how I got into it. Throughout my whole entire coaching journey, you know, which I've always kept in contact with Coach Ferentz. I let him know where I was at every stop, not in anticipation of coming back here, but you know, it's about who you know, and coaching is a networking business. So you know, I figured if I could keep him, you know, in my pocket and have him in my pocket, maybe make a phone call for me here or there, that would create an opportunity for me later on. So yeah, I had a taste of the real world. Long story short, and it wasn't for me. I love this coaching thing. I love being around young people. It's an unbelievable platform to be able to reach out and mentor them, and I don't take it for granted.
Thank you for that, Kelvin. The next question is from Leah Van.
Hi, Kelvin. I'm Leah. I'm from the Cedar Rapids Gazette. It's nice to meet you virtually. Mm-hmm. And we talked to some of your players yesterday, and they were saying that you give like an inspirational quote every day on their like note sheets. And I was wondering where you draw those quotes from. And that was my first question. My second question was about Joe Evans and where you see him playing this fall. We saw quite a bit of him on Saturday.
Well, you know, those inspirational quotes, they come from a lot of different places. Some as quick as a Google search, if I need to find something that's on my mind. And I've got a friend of mine, Tim Triplett, who every year sends me the leadership papers. And it's got a motivational quote for every day of the year. 365 days, there's a quote in there. And so, you know, I reference that a lot because there's some things that aren't as widely known that are on there. And I just think it's again, getting back to the mentoring and the coaching, It's not all about X's and O's. It's not always about, you know, making sure your eyes are in the right place and playing with pad level. You got to relate to these kids on a personal level. The development has to be holistic, and that's the reason for the quotes every day. It's because I want them to not only apply them to the game, but they can be applied in their everyday life. So, yeah, I enjoy doing it. I enjoy finding those quotes every single day because, you know, they inspire me too.
Kelvin, the second part of that question was your insight on Joe Evans. Joe
is hard charging. Love his energy. He, you know, I think his development in terms of a full-time defensive lineman, I think people are ready to see that. He's had an excellent spring. I remember when I got him in the spring ball of 2019 was when he made that trip from the linebacker room to the D-line room. And I knew we had a hard charging guy with great athleticism, but he's really embraced the fundamentals of defensive line play, the leverage, the blow delivery, the separation, all those things, and going from playing on 2 feet to playing with your hand down. You know, he's really taken to that. And I'm excited for him this fall because, I mean, not only he's got the pass rush acumen, he's got that knack for doing that, but man, he's really come on as a first and second down player as well.
Kelvin, the next question is from Scott Docterman.
Hey, Kelvin, how are you today?
Doing great, Scott. How about you?
Good. I'm doing well. I want to ask you about Y.A. Black. Seems like a silent assassin. I know that's how he was kind of referenced when he signed. He didn't get a workout on Saturday. What have you seen from him that kind of puts him on the one line, and what can we expect from him as he grows into a mature football player?
The thing that so Y.A. is, I mean, he's a great recruiting story. The thing that I like the most about him is his demeanor, and, you know, quiet assassin. I wouldn't call him an assassin just yet. He ain't really put a hit out on anybody, but man, he practices his butt off. And that's one thing you noticed as a freshman last year is that when the pads come on, he has an intent that is different from most first-year players that you see. And he doesn't even know it, but he's a hostile player on the interior. And he was hostile in camp, and that hostility carried on to when he got here. So I'm really excited to continue working with him. But the thing that I'm most impressed with is just his maturity about the game. You know, he's a note taker. He's a great question asker. He listened and soaked up last year so much from Davion and Heflin and Chauncey, and he really wants to be good at it. And there's a lot of guys that want to be good at it, but they're not willing to do that work, that extra work. I mean, he came in and met with me Monday and Wednesday, twice a week from when we started back school in January until we started spring ball. Not every guy did that. Not every guy came in to meet with me and watch tape. And I made sure that when he came in, don't come in unprepared. Come in with questions so we can be productive in this half-hour, 45-minute session that we have. And every time he came in with questions, and you could really see it. You know, unfortunately, you know, he didn't get a chance to show the fans on Saturday what he's got, but we're looking forward to getting him back in the fall.
Kelvin, the next question is from Chad Leistico.
Hey, Kelvin, taking the conversation a little bit off the field here. We asked Seth about yesterday's verdict in Minneapolis, and he alluded to some conversation that occurred this morning. I couldn't tell if that was within your team or what. Did you guys talk about the verdict as a team? And kind of, I just want to hear your thoughts on where things stand with the program and your thoughts nationally, frankly.
You know, unfortunately, I wasn't here this morning. You know, I took my son to daycare, so I missed that meeting. You know, and we have had conversations there was a conversation had amongst the Hawkeye Championship teams about the verdict, and there was conversations had last week too about the Dante Wright killing as well. You know, in terms of the verdict, you know, yesterday it was a day filled with sadness, and it was a day filled with relief. You know, the sadness was because, you know, it opened some old wounds from last year when George Floyd was murdered. It opened some wounds there that, you know, it did happen. It brought it back. it brought it back to the forefront. So, that created some sorrow just in my heart, but there was also some relief too in the verdict, because even though people saw what they saw on camera, I wasn't one to raise my hand and say that it was going to be a slam dunk conviction on that case. And I think that goes to show you, even if you can see a man be murdered on camera for the world to see, and for you to still have doubt that the perpetrator will be convicted of murder, shows you how much further we have to go, just in terms of race relations, in terms of accountability, in terms of justice, because I've seen it where it didn't go that way, where the verdict didn't go that way. So a long way yet still to go in terms of race relations and police relations, a long way to go in terms of justice and reform. But this case helped shed light, and hopefully through the power of social media and people are able to see, exactly what happened. This case reached limits that, the Rodney King trial never reached, just because of social media. Going back to for our team, we're heading in the right direction. I can't stress that enough. I love where we are right now, just in terms of the open and honest conversations and uncomfortable conversations that we're having. I told our players last week when we talked about the Dante Wright situation, is I made a mistake last summer in assuming that my players knew where I stood. I made a mistake in assuming that I knew where certain players stood based off of where they were from or what they may look like. That was a mistake on my part. I'll never do it again. We have open and honest conversation here, not only as in terms of our positions, but cross-positionally too in the Hawkeye Challenge groups. And I've really been enlightened by the things that our young men have to say. It's just, I feel good. I'm proud of where we are right now, because of these young people see this as a safe space to be able to share their opinions, regardless of if they differ or whatever side of the spectrum that they're on. What we're trying to teach and what we're trying to breed here with these young people is respect. We want them to know that they're loved. We want them to know that they have significance here. We want them to know that they're accepted here. And that's of any and all opinions. And hopefully, once they leave here, they can go and make the world a better place, because they are the future. They're the future policemen. They're the future troopers. They're the future lawyers and doctors of this world. And I don't take lightly the impact that we're going to have on them during this 4 or 5 year period. So, the open and honest conversations that we're having, specifically on topics of race, on topics of social and racial injustice, it's unbelievable, because we spent a lot of time talking about team building. We spent a lot of time talking about leadership and things of that nature. But there's some other issues too that were not being approached, that are being approached now. And I think our players appreciate it, and I know our coaches on the coaching staff appreciate it.
Kelvin, the next question is from Grant Becker.
Kelvin, I really appreciate your perspective on that. And I guess I want to stay here as well and ask what your personal reaction to that was yesterday. And were you nervous? Did you watch it? And have you had conversations with any of the young black men on your team following the verdict? And just what was that day like for you, not as a football coach or a football player, but as a black man in this country?
I didn't watch the verdict, but I didn't watch it. I was watching it on Twitter as it was going down on Twitter. And so, yeah, yes, I was nervous, because like I said before, I've seen it where it didn't go down, where a person was murdered, video evidence showed that a person was murdered regardless of intent. And I've seen it go the other way, where a person can be acquitted of that. So there was some tense moments for me, wondering whether or not the officer was going to be convicted or not. And like I said, I think that just goes to show you how much further we have to go when, you can do it on camera for the world to see, and people still have doubt. In terms of our team, like I said, I missed out on the meeting this morning. I didn't have a chance to. I wasn't there. I had another obligation, but I will take the time to talk to our guys about it. I've talked to friends around the country about it, and there's still a lot of work to be done, Grant. It's a step in the right direction. I think a precedent was set. And those are good things, but there's still a lot of work to do. And as a Black man, it's not going to, I'm still going to talk to my son about, you know, when he gets up driving at age 10 and 2 and how to respond, because I just, although it's a step in the right direction, we still have a long way to go.
Kelvin, the next question is from Mike Halas.
Hi, Kelvin. Good afternoon.
What's up, Mike?
I'll ask you about something you mentioned moments ago in that you have been enlightened by your players. How have they enlightened you? What do you know now that you may not have known several months ago about them and what they think?
You know, I think just the general unawareness, specifically, and you know, my room is made up of Black and white players. I got some mixed players and some Black players, but you know, just the general unawareness last year of our white players, that they had no idea that our Black players felt the way that they did, which was, you know, we spend a lot of time together. We shower together, we live together, we eat together. And just the general unawareness from them was a shock to me. And I felt bad because I missed an opportunity to educate them. I'm with them every single day. And, you know, just to worry about, you know, how they're playing on the field and how they're doing in the classroom, I missed an opportunity to educate them on where I'm coming from and what my walk or what my drive to the facility may be like. I missed that opportunity, and I won't do it again. And although they were unaware, they weren't reluctant to listen. Actually, they wanted to listen. They were thirsty for that knowledge. That brought us together. You know, me being open and honest, transparent, vulnerable even with some of my stories to them, I think it brought us closer. They have a newfound respect for me. And then, you know, again, the players of color here, just learning from them is they see it exactly how I see it, but from their perspective of being, you know, student athletes. I haven't lost what that feeling's like, but also I'm 38 years old. I'm not walking around this campus anymore as a teenager or a young adult. So I understand that their perspective is different, even more so now. So I've just been enlightened on both sides of the story of the coin. And like I said before, I won't make the mistake again of assuming that they know how I feel. And I won't make the mistake of assuming that I know how they feel. We're going to talk about it. However uncomfortable it may be, we're going to have those conversations because I ultimately believe it's going to bring us closer together.
Kelvin, we'll ask for your time for one more question. Final question this afternoon is from Scott Docterman.
Yeah, Kelvin, I'll keep it on this topic as well. And just wanted to kind of ask you about, is there anything you took away from maybe some of your white players, you know, maybe their perspectives? Did that give you pause? Did you think about their thoughts? And has that kind of helped bridge a gap that maybe what was there a year ago?
Again, just going back to what I took away from them was that, you know, when you're in the majority, you don't really think about how things affect the minority. And that doesn't make you a bad person, okay? So that doesn't make you a bad person. It's just, you're unaware, you haven't been exposed to it, but it's our job in this environment that we're in, this football environment where we're bringing kids in from all over the country, all different kinds of backgrounds, to make sure that everyone is exposed to everyone's culture, to make sure that everyone feels uncomfortable. We talk about be comfortable being uncomfortable. Well, that doesn't just happen in the weight room or on the field. That needs to happen socially as well. And the only way that can happen socially is through conversation. And if you're not fostering the conversation, then you'll never get a chance to mature in that arena in terms of social and racial inequality and social and racial justice. So just their thirst for knowledge and their acceptance once the conversations were had, that's something that I take away from it, because they weren't resistant to it. They didn't put their head in the sand and say, oh, well, you know, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to talk about it. That's not my problem. These guys opened up and they were receptive and they showed some empathy. So that's what I took away from them, especially in talking about the white players, is that they wanted to know. They wanted to know, much like on the coaching field, kids want to be coached. They wanted to have these conversations where I know some adults who are set in their ways who don't want to have the conversation. And that's just, I guess it's just part of being old.
Kelvin, we can't thank you enough for sharing your perspective this